Abi Spooner from Atlas Consulting. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, good today.
Oh, it's great. Absolutely delighted to have one of the gurus for subscriptions and membership models, on the podcast today and chatting to us. So again, thank you for sparing your time and coming along. It's been a busy year, and a busy last few months, certainly for you guys. You've been nominated for awards and you've won some awards as well, and in such a short time
Yep.
since launching. So I guess tell the people, what's the secret to building such credibility and great value for people in such a short space of time?
Oh, crikey, you set me up beautifully. We are nearly 3 years old. Just a toddler in terms of consulting, but we've had probably 40 plus clients now. We have, as you say, we've won awards from PPA and the NMAs, which has really been startling in such a short time. But ultimately, when we launched Atlas, we wanted to be the consultants we always wanted when we were publisher side. So I think that's the thing, how many times have you had a consultant come in and have said they've given you a massive deck of 1,000 slides, you printed it off and it goes in the cupboard because it's complicated and these things are difficult. So we are really focused on trying to make things realistic, practical, and stuff that people can take away and do immediately. So it's all about really understanding people's businesses, but also what their capabilities are. There's no point kind of getting someone, oh, you need to do some massive AI project when the team's relatively small, they're stretched, they don't have the resources to do it. Yes, that's something to have the ambition to be able to implement, but ultimately you've got to give people stuff that's going to make a difference to their business really, really quickly. So that's where we've kind of focused in on. It's all about growth, whether that is volume, revenue, profit, but it's making it in a way that people are finding out more about how to run their business really effectively, but also to kind of make sure they're driving the right metrics.
I love that. Yeah. And you mentioned, making it practical and sort of useful for people to use themselves in their day-to-day lives and kind of, breaking things down from sort of concept into tactic. I love that. Right. And I'm a bit of a startup geek. So I love seeing like new companies and seeing how different sort of people do things. What you're doing is building a startup as well as trying to help people build their own businesses in the publishing space then yourself. So it sounds like you're possibly able to use some of that learning as you build your own business and then apply it into the people that you're helping out then as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be, this stuff has got to work. And when you're built, as much as when you're recommending clients ways of approaching things, actually you've got to be able to template your own work. You've got to have a structure of the right way of thinking about things. So things like an approach to lifetime value, which I know we will end up talking about more. And that it's my favorite subject in the whole world. But equally, you've got to have those principles. And what we've found really interesting is that those principles about subscriptions and growth, two things, they focus on the customer. So understanding who the customer is. So for our publishing clients, that's their readers and subscribers. Mm-hmm. But for us, it's also our clients, and they've got to understand the value they're getting from the services that Atlas are giving them. On the other side, that has got to also be a way of kind of talking through things, helping people to have a structure, to understand their results, to understand their numbers, and be able to make really, really great decisions from them.
You mentioned the word principles, and I think, a lot of people throw around like the jargon of sort of, or the buzzwords of like values or, but it really, it's the same kind of thing. It all just comes down to sort of, I guess, attitude, really. So from that perspective, because you work with so many people now, and that's, and credit to you, it's growing. That's a testament to the work you guys do. So when you walk into a publisher's office for the first time, or well, maybe now that we're half virtual anyway, but when you speak to somebody for the first time, what is it that tells you, like, do you have maybe one thing? I get that maybe some of it's intuition, but is there anything concrete that you either look for or people could maybe look to improve themselves that tells you whether, they get it or not, if they have the right attitude then going into a project?
Really good question. It's probably got a million answers. I think the really key thing, and we start every project with a series of stakeholder interviews. And clients have told us that those stakeholder interviews, where we ask them some really sort of some general questions about their business, and then we start to kind of dig into how they're working. A lot of people have told us it's a bit like subscriptions therapy. So we've been there, we've walked in their shoes, we've felt their pains, we've had those ambitions for our businesses. And actually, that's what's really, really fascinating. So we will talk to them and find out sort of those approaches. If they've got the right reporting, LTV models and things in their business already, that's great. That allows us to accelerate. But equally, it's about that willingness to think about the customer. There's an awful lot of publishers who in the last kind of 5-10 years, everyone's been squeezed, everyone's been throwing out offers. And a lot of publishers have kind of lost sight of who their readers are, what their customers are, and what customer value really means to them. And it's really wonderful at the moment, watching clients kind of pivot back into, oh, this is what my customer is here for. This is the value that my brand delivers to that customer. And that's a really powerful thing, because it's not just stops you from selling 3 issues for £1 repeatedly on every email that you send out. It also reminds everybody in the business that what they're producing is really important to their readers. So if you get everything right, if you've got your customer value proposition nailed, if you've got your messaging reminding the customer of why they're there, yes, when you put out your 3 for £1 offer, they're like, yeah, this is perfect. I want this and I'm going to stay. And, as Robbie Kelman-Baxter says, you've made that forever promise.
Mm-hmm.
You've said, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay and keep paying you because you're going to keep giving me the content and the information that I want. It's a real challenge. I think seeing that customer point and understanding what your customer wants can be a real piece of magic to unlock businesses, especially when, all you're doing is like, oh, my numbers are going down. It's difficult to step away from that and think something a bit more kind of audience focused, but it always delivers great results when people do it.
Yeah, you've set me up really nice for a question I was going to ask later on, but I guess we can jump into it now. LTV is something you speak about a lot, and we will jump into that for sure. The V is value, but
Yeah.
for me, for example, as I said, like I'm a startup nerd. I follow lots of different founders and companies doing all sorts of different things, and that's a common theme across that space is, well, first of all, like what's the LTV, and then what's your CAC, and what's the ratio? That seems to
Yeah.
be, that's like the core guiding principle for any of these companies. But it seems to be lost a little bit in the publishing space, or certainly not spoken about, as far as I can see, to the same degree or as widespread as it might be, say, in like the founder community. And one of the things that I've sort of learned, which is a great, I think it was Alex Formosi who said it to me. I don't know if you know him. He's does all this sales content and conversion content online. One of the things he says, which I think is a really simple way to think about it, because it's so clear, is value is what you get and price is what you pay. And the
Yeah.
discrepancy between those things is essentially how a business makes money. And then by maximizing the value, you can actually sort of charge higher prices, and then that can offset your costs, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
from a publisher perspective, somebody said this to me the other day online, and I thought it was cool. It was like publishers need to be a destination, right? So they need to essentially be the end point for people on a journey, when it's especially digitally, right? Because it's so how does a publisher become a destination? How do they think about, so the lifetime value is the length of time you can provide such value. How do you understand,
Yeah.
like, how do we provide, what is the value we provide, and then how do we provide that then for a longer period of time or enhance that over time?
So it's there's lots of ways of approaching value, and I'm fascinated by it because everyone thought price and value were the same things, and as you say, they absolutely are not. And I'm going to go in a slight detour around one of my kind of, I like a metaphor, and thinking about like you're buying a house, right? And if you want a 1 bedroom flat somewhere off the Thames, you're probably talking about 1.5 million pounds, right? But all you're getting is a 1 bedroom flat. But you could probably move out of London, buy a 1.5 million pound house, which would have, I don't know, 6 bedrooms and a massive garden. And that's almost it's what the customer values for that amount of money. And I think I always use that just to kind of remind myself, it's not just that, everything is not compared to a cup of coffee anymore, though everyone used to quite like to, though, as cups of coffee now seem to be above £4 a go. I'm not really sure that that's going to be a
No.
useful comparison for that much longer. Though I did see on LinkedIn the other day someone doing value of online news in compared to the amount of a Big Mac in their home country, which I thought is a quite interesting value comparison.
Yeah, speak to that a little bit. Can you say more on that? Just as a,
So yeah, it was. I saw it because it's always really, you get,
I think we
oh,
saw the same thing. Yeah.
Netflix is like £9.99 or something, but if you're in India or you're in the UK or Germany or anywhere else in the world, the value of money is different too.
Hmm.
So actually being able to go, my product in my country is this equivalent value to, I don't know, the Big Mac index of like 4 Big Macs. But actually, compared to the price in America, it's actually half as expensive. But because of that kind of value of transaction, it's really hard. Everyone gets stuck when they're talking about monthly payments around the £10, $10, because it's a nice price point. But actually, if you dig into your customers, you may find that value that on the price that they will pay for that value is a lot higher.
It just keeps coming back to value is what you get and price is what you pay because, especially like comparing America to, let's say, well, even America and Britain to somewhere else in, say, like the developing world or in a more autocratic society or just where there's less freedom of the press, that value actually increases. So, but the price point might be lower just because the purchasing power parity is low in that particular country compared to somebody somewhere like so rich as the UK or the US. But also the freedoms of being able to express that, it's a much higher cost personally to be able to express those, and therefore then the value to the general public or whoever the reader might be, especially if it's for contentious issues. That value can be significantly higher because it's harder
Mm,
to even express those
yeah,
opinions or anything.
yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing about, you can work out what customers are happy to pay through testing, through trying different prices and all of that. And it's really important that, you don't just go out with the highest price that people will convert on, because actually what you want is what I always call the optimal price. So not the highest price you can sell, but the highest price that you can convert somebody on, and they will continue to pay that price. Because ultimately this isn't e-com. You're not selling an item once. You're selling it and then asking for more and more money over time.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that you mentioned e-com just in general, or you know, because here's one thing that I've been thinking about lately, and I'm not sure where I land yet, but I think I know where I'm leaning. That the publisher model, I think, to me, it strikes me that maybe publishers have to do more to provide value in the sense that, like, go beyond the content, right? And that falls into that I guess, end goal of becoming a destination. So does that mean, for example, lots of publishers traditionally for a long time have rejected either being an affiliate for products or creating their own specific products, whether they're like,
Mm.
digital products like services in a way, or actual physical goods or products, or that they, have a marketplace maybe for whatever their particular niche is. So that's been sort of taboo for a long time. And now, given like, if you look at something comparatively similar, sort of same but different, right, is like the creator economy. Um, and if you move towards, say, like B2B creators, and then look at, say, B2B journalism, that's a very fuzzy overlap there, right? So for publishers, is the content becoming secondary, and the subscription is actually based around, let's say, maybe things like implementation or product or stuff that's, let's say, complementary or secondary to the content itself, and therefore justifying maybe, say, a higher subscription fee or even a membership fee at all?
Yeah. So I think it's a really tricky one, because ultimately what this comes down to is what people are buying into. And there have been a lot of people thinking, well, if I add all of these bells and whistles, people are more likely to stay.
Mm.
But if it's not relevant and it's not appropriate to your customers' needs, is that going to make a difference, or is that just going to cost you loads of money to implement?
Right.
At the PPA festival this year, I don't know if you saw Tom Armstrong from New York Times speak.
Sadly, I couldn't attend this year. So please fill me in and fill in anybody else who was unlucky.
He was great. And one of the interesting things is that ultimately New York Times mission is news. It's all about news. Ultimately, it's about bringing people so that they can get that news content that they value, that they see. However, there's lots of graphs out there about the Trump bump. There's lots of graphs out there about what's happening now with New York Times, which is that recipes are increasing their subscription volumes. So that's a big part of it. But equally, the growth that they've had is all about puzzles.
Mm.
And that, I don't know about you, but I was out with someone last night who was on some kind of 100-day Wordle streak, and it's a relationship thing with friends, you know. So not only is the publisher encouraging people to come to them to do the puzzles, probably then reading content, but also they're finding these extra sticky things. And there's been some really amazing work done, and I know the team over at News UK are looking at this as well. Lisa from News UK was talking on the audience stage at the PPA about them understanding, is it about people reading extra content? Is it about them engaging with podcasts? Is it about commenting below the line? Is it about doing puzzles within a week of starting their subscription? What are the habits that people who are going to stay with you for ages have? Wall Street Journal did Project Habit, must be a couple of years ago now. They did a really similar thing. Look at your existing subscribers who are sticky and staying with you, and what are those habits? And how can you encourage people who are in that onboarding part of their subscription to go, okay, if I'm doing this, how do I encourage myself and encourage these people to keep engaging? How do we keep, if you do a puzzle within 7 days or something of subscribing, you're more likely to still be subscribing in a year's time. And there's some, wonderful pieces of analysis starting to happen with that and tying all of those things through. So I think there is a habit of publishers to go, we need to add more, which maybe is actually, hang on, just remember the value you are delivering. Check that you're delivering it in the way that your customers want, and then work out what else you can add in to make that valuable, because ultimately it's got to wash its face. I remember there was a phase probably 15, 20 years ago where we were all adding like loyalty clubs. And as far as I saw most of the analysis, it wasn't that the loyalty club was encouraging people to renew. People who were engaged with the brand would engage with whatever offers that loyalty club gave. But if you took it away, your churn went up. So it's really difficult trying to work out what the right way of doing that is. And a lot of B2B publishers are doing this really well because they're developing these data products, which people can then take into their day-to-day work and make them a part of their practice. And that's really amazing, because it's not just I'm coming to this B2B publisher to get information about my profession. They are becoming a supplier of information for people to do their jobs and actively engaging with that data. So it's ultimately, it's about, it goes back to my first point, which is about understanding your audience. And the only way you're really going to do that is to get in the room with them and talk to them. And I think there's some, that research, a lot of publishers have cut back on the amount of research they're doing, and it's the wrong thing to do.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever spoken to a customer and not learned something I didn't know.
I love that. Yeah, I absolutely, because it's the age old adage of data tells you, what's going wrong, and people tell you why.
Tell you why.
And again, like, the startup community is great for that. The whole thing is like, get out of the building, go talk to your customers, especially before you build, so it's kind of the measure twice, cut once approach. So you don't, go off wasting a load of time or money and effort and tears, basically building something that nobody wants. Right. And I think you've nailed it on the head there with a couple of examples. There's so much to unpack there, but just if you're a publisher now, right? Because I think you've hit the nail on the head here. Is how do you understand what your customers want? So we mentioned, like, you become a destination and you have to provide value.
Yeah.
But then you have to also avoid putting on all the extra bells and whistles. Just because them down the streets is doing it doesn't mean we have to do it exactly the same. And I'm sure you'll love this as a consultant. The "it depends" is probably a one that comes out a lot. And actually, I don't know if this just popped into my head. Sorry, it's a bit of ADHD or whatever. But anyway, it's like the mom test by Rob Fitzpatrick. Have you seen that book? It's basically a book about customer interviews. And, your mom is always going to say, like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Yeah. So, you can't be asking, you have to go out and ask the hard questions to the people who'll probably tell you, maybe, that sucks.
What are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Yeah. What the hell are you thinking? Do this instead.
Yeah.
So how does somebody, especially if maybe, because I'm sitting here, right? One of my messages at Writers Bloc is to try and, like, just show publishers and show freelance journalists and sort of anybody in that space who's willing to listen, basically, that think more like a startup. Get out of the building and just solve problems for people. And that's how you'll actually provide value. Because people who feel listened to will then tell you more things and at a deeper level. And then you can then go and act upon that, which then they will feel more listened to. And so it's the virtual perpetual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, then if you can sort of charge them for it, well, there's your business, right? So I'm trying to sort of bring that to publishers as well. So with all of that framing, I know that was a bit of a spiel there, but how could a publisher who got stuck in a rut, regardless of size, or maybe, if they're independent and small, or if they're maybe major, like the New York Times, how can they start to think about, like, learning from the customer and asking these hard questions to understand really what's valuable for their audience?
Wow, there's so much there to unpack. And there are so many things that can be done at a reasonable price. You don't need a vast piece of research. Great if you can afford it. Great if you've got the resource. But equally, there are things you can do. There's loads of free ways of doing surveys. So ask your customer questions, but only ask them the stuff that you can really act on. I've seen often people tend to ask the questions.
What's a terrible question? What's the worst question you always hear?
No, I don't know. There's a question, I can't quite remember the phrasing, but you end up, the answer ends up flattering the publisher.
Mm.
And actually, I think when you're asking questions, you've got to be open to the horrible stuff as well as the good stuff. If the answer to this question is not going to teach you anything, do you need to ask it? Because actually, you probably only got a little bit of time of focus from a consumer. Especially, I got sent a survey from, I think it was the Tate yesterday, and it took me about 20 minutes to answer. And I was looking at the questions, so I was really interesting. But equally, if I was just doing it from a consumer point, I probably would have stopped about 10 questions in.
Mm.
So you've got to make sure that it's engaged and focused. So you're asking the right questions, asking questions about what they value, asking questions that make sense. There was one on that survey yesterday, and it said you can only give 3 answers. They gave me 20 things to choose from, and I wanted to tell them 6 of them. So it's really difficult. So start off with that kind of quant analysis, get those questions out. If you've got a phone team or an email team or something, actually engage, use your customer service people to do a lot of your survey. If you've got a question, you really want to know what your customers think about, get your customer service team to ask it. So Lou from Nat Geo for Kids has actually merged her customer service team into her marketing team. So they're able almost to provide a research function in a live situation, which is, it's a really inspired choice. And I think, customer services have often been, a room of people that you don't speak to very often. Mm-hmm. But actually there's a huge opportunity for using them to, even if it's just one extra question on every call they make that week, or a quick question at the end of an email or a survey like that. So there's that. Then get some customers in a room, talk to them, phone them up. If someone from a brand you really valued messages and, could I speak to you about it? These are the things we're trying to find out. And we've done projects with clients where we're trying to work out where their product needs to go. Mm-hmm. Does it need more digital? Is it a podcast? Is it something completely different that you haven't thought of yet? So speaking to customers and getting that insight as well. But I was being a bit flippant earlier about, don't just copy what everybody else is doing. But absolutely, especially in those niches, what are your competitors doing? And sometimes your competitors aren't just, if you're a publisher, other magazines. Your competitors might be something, it might be a message board, it might be some kind of membership thing. They're not necessarily, people are competing for people's headspace now. So, if you are a magazine and what you're finding is people are spending lots of time online doing something else, how can you compete for share of attention with those by solving people's problems? So really understanding that motivation. And I'm not talking about, I want to come here because it's the best information. Motivation often comes down to something really kind of basic, like I want to feel comfortable with the choices I'm making. I want to feel like I'm doing my best at my job so that I can walk into a room and feel confident. Mm. It's those kinds of needs. The best example, and I've used this a lot, so you may have heard this before, forgive me, washing powder, right? On the box, it talks about bioenzymes and all of those kind of chemically things. But actually what it comes down to, and the ultimate customer needs is it's solving for is, I want my family to be clean. As someone said to me the other day, I don't want my kids to smell. That's why I use washing powder.
That's exactly it.
It's a real, it's an absolute core need. And, sometimes it's, I want to feel smug about stuff. Sometimes I want to know what the gossip is. Mm-hmm. I want to feel like I'm on top of things. I want to, be the person in my friend group who is recommending new bands. Mm. It's understanding what that core need is and then working out how that transfers onto what you're doing. But look at competitors, see what they're doing. Ask your customers, why do you choose us over them, or why do you choose them over us? And trying to have that view, but also understanding your wider audience. You're not reaching everybody you could. Mm. Why? Where are they? What are they doing? And trying to just understand all of those customer needs before you start to kind of build stuff. Because, so many times you build stuff and are people going to engage with that? You don't want to spend a load of money building something if actually customers are going to go, I don't understand what it's for.
Exactly.
But when you get it spot on, you've got that, this is perfect. This is just what I need. I'm going to keep subscribing. I'm going to keep engaging with it, and I'm going to recommend it to all my friends.
It's outcomes, right?
Mm.
Like what is, from a startup point of view, and if you're delivering a product or service, it's like, well, what's the end goal? What's the person trying to do? And it's the same thing for publishers. Well, what was the person doing like immediately before they came to your site, like or like a
Yep.
competitor, and then what are they trying to get out of it when they get there? It can be tough to understand sometimes, but if you dive in deep, then you can really understand. I love that example of the washing up liquid every time. It's just, you don't want to have the smelly kid in school. It's simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Again, just to mention Alex Hormozy, he's great at this type of thing, or this type of framing and thinking about it. Is I think too many people get stuck on the what he calls is selling the flight, right? It's like, oh, we'll give you the
Mm.
great seat and the airline is this and whatever. It's like, no, sell the destination. Why they want to go to Hawaii or wherever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
Mauritius. It doesn't matter, it's sell the destination and sell oh, you'll be relaxed and on the beach and you'll have your, your cocktail in hand and whatever else. Rather than all
Hmm.
these technical specs of vehicle to get you there.
If I had £1 for every magazine subscription advert I've seen that says we are the number one title for X, I would be, it's like, why? Who cares?
Yeah, yeah.
It might infer that lots of other people find that brand great, but actually much better to, I don't know, have customer testimonials saying it. I love reading this magazine because it gives me the news that I need.
Mm.
My children love reading The Week Junior because they love all the stories about animals, because they're fascinated by the news that's going through. All of those things are really, really kind of powerful. The biggest children's mag in the UK. Who cares? Customers don't. We do, because we're publishers and we want our numbers to go up. But it's actually got to flip it round and make it about customer benefits, not the features of what you're selling. And it's the same, whether it's a publisher, whether it's, a B2B, equally some of the direct to consumer subscriptions now.
Mm.
Some of these things like Gusto, those products, you're selling the ability to cook delicious dinners. It's a really clear kind of approach. Your pet food, it's all about, I want to do the best for my dog because he's an important part of my family.
Mm.
It's not, I'm going to buy this thing. It's about, what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah, and with the internet, then, like, you don't need to, like the old days, it was almost expected to chase mass market. Now you can really just hone in on a niche, and it's
Yeah.
almost better to focus on the niche and get a little bit more nuanced or narrow because I guess people pay for more specificity, right? Like, um, what's generic almost tends to get ignored, and then what's
Yeah.
very specific or very precise tends to, like, the more well, to a point obviously, but the more precise you get it, the more valuable then it becomes to that
Yeah.
person.
And if you're a big broad brand, yes, you've probably got multiple audience segments that you're going out with different messaging to.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your news junkies and you've got your people who just want to be in touch, or there's people who just want sport information or the lifestyle side. But actually I do really love a niche brand, because you can be really specific and you can be really kind of understanding why someone is there, especially when it's like passion brands.
Mm-hmm.
You could come up with some really beautiful marketing because it is so niche. And often in those situations, the editorial team are that group of people. They really understand like the emotional side of, I don't know, farming or yachting or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're usually practitioners, right? They're doing
Mm-hmm.
it themselves, and it's the love of it. And then so
Yeah.
there's the publication comes along after the fact, almost. That's what I
Mm,
love.
use your experts. Use your experts.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I guess we've talked a lot about value, right? And like, what is that? And we've talked a little bit about how publishers think about the value they're providing, but versus actually what subscribers and members kind of want. So let's assume a publisher they've got their act together, they've consumed all of your content, and now they're ready to go. How do they, first of all, understand lifetime value, right? So they've understand
Yeah.
what the value is. How do they extend that for as long as possible? How does it come into play with the LTV CAC ratio, CAC being the cost of acquiring a customer? And what, let's say, let's get real deep. What do most people get wrong that you frequently see, even though you're banging your head against the wall, that people could understand, let's say, before they come into a room with you?
Okay. So, you have now given me the stage to talk about my favorite thing in the whole world, which is lifetime value.
That's what we're here
And
for.
I need to be more, I'm going to define it a little bit further, which is that lifetime value is a profit calculation. There is a lot of stuff out there where it is a little bit more aligned to revenue. And that's absolutely fine, understanding the average revenue that a customer is going to bring you. And often, with digital brands, when the actual cost to serve is relatively low, that's probably fine. Your additional cost to serve are relatively low. It might be some payment fees. It might be a little bit of kind of additional marketing management piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got, especially when you're talking about publishers with print magazines or print content or something that is costing, you can't look at this as a revenue calculation. It has to be a profit one. So lifetime value, and I'm going back to my favorite metaphor. So it's a bit like, let's say that you're a pilot of a plane, right? And you are running a subscriptions business, and you have got thousands and thousands of dials and switches and levers that you can pull to change the performance of what you're doing. So you're sat in the front of the plane doing that. But, and I've absolutely been here, so this is a story about me screwing up back in the day. I found there's a huge opportunity when I was at Dennis, and I went to the board and I said, look, give me £50,000. We've got this huge opportunity. If we do this, and I gave them a big old presentation of all the different metrics that this £50,000 of investment in activity would deliver. And I got a round, a set of pretty bored looking faces back and no £50,000. And what I actually realized was that we need in subscriptions a way of talking not just to our fellow subscriptions geeks, but to the wider business, and more importantly, to our CFOs. So actually, that's where lifetime value comes in, because it's a calculation of, based on whatever is happening at the moment and our average performance metrics, how long, if I acquire a subscriber right now, how long are they going to stay? How much profit are they going to drive? And then how much are they going to cost to acquire? Now, that's not that pilot viewpoint with all those switches and bells and whistles. What that is that seat back video that shows you, I've come from here, I'm going to here, and the little plane icon that shows you where you are on that journey. It's a really, it's a one simple calculation made out of lots of things that allows you to answer one really important question, which for every pound or dollar I spend, how much am I going to get back in how much time? So let's say if your CFO has said you have to be profitable in 18 months, you can work out based on your average performance in 18 months. If I spend this money, these subscribers come on board, and by the end of 18 months, each of them, let's say, will have made me £55 of profit by the end of 18 months. That means if I spend £60, I will not hit my CFO's deadline of 18 months profit. If I spend 55 or less, I will. So it's a really good way of kind of flipping it over and going, actually, if you're happy to have profit within 18 months, based on these calculations, I can spend £55 acquiring a subscriber. What we often find is people have very much kind of in-year profitability. So actually, I have to be profitable in year. Therefore, work out what your profit target is and then go, okay, so if in this example, in year £32 I make, so don't spend more than £32 acquiring your average subscriber. So that's the challenge. And you can use it to look at how cohorts are behaving in the past. Are people staying as long as we expected them to? You can look at it for feasibility right now. So here's the example. I went back to the board and I said, if you give me £50,000 in 18 months' time, I will give you, I don't know what it was, 130,000 back. And then they said yes, because they understood it's a finance transaction. It is not a dark arts of subscriptions marketing, which, we all love, and we all love those metrics. But if you've established this is how lifetime value works, it turns into a much simpler conversation.
Yeah, it sounds like the way you approached it with Dennis, and then obviously that's how you approach it now generally, is you flip the framing again. Big proponent of how you frame things, and love looking into that. So it's you flip the framing from it's a cost as part of the marketing department to, oh, it's an investment that's certified by the CFO that will actually bring
Yeah.
us more money. There's a return on this. It's not just, like you say, a black hole of dark art subscription marketing. I love that phrase.
I mean, we all quite like it being a dark
Yeah,
arts thing, but
exactly.
yeah,
And the finance bros do that as well, right? They try and throw all these jargon words out there, and, confuse us all when it's literally just, top line costs, then bottom line.
yeah. So I think so you mentioned the LTV CAC ratio, and, everyone, it likes to make it sound really complex. To be honest, it is just that question. For every pound that you put in, by this point, how many pounds are you going to get back? So it's effectively saying, if I've spent £20 on this order, at the end of 3 years, for every pound I've put in, I'll have £1.45 back. So it starts to allow you to kind of look at something really complex in quite a simple way. The other really huge benefit of LTV, and we've seen this a couple of times with teams, is that acquisition teams get given volume targets, retention teams get given churn targets, and what that often means is you get a load of probably low quality subs, your acquisition team hits all their bonuses, and in the other room you've got a retention team who are tearing their hair out because none of these people want to stay. But if you've implemented LTV across both teams, what everyone is then focused on is the quality of the subscribers you're bringing in. Now, that could mean, actually, I can bring in loads of subscribers for a relatively small amount of money. There will be high churn in the first 3 months or so. But if we look at the net cost of bringing a full price subscriber on the file, it's worth it. Or it might be, don't bring on all those rubbish subscribers at a really high price because you'll make the retention team cry. It's that balance. And once you've got retention and acquisition working together, you can anticipate planned churn and not freak out because you knew it was coming, because you knew maybe this cohort were a bit cheaper to acquire, but will churn more. And you can go back maybe to using some of those softer offers because you know what's going to happen. And that's, it's a wonderful way of bringing teams together, because equally, if the retention team work out that by, adding puzzles, they're going to add another 1.5% onto retention, that actually gives your acquisition team the opportunity of increasing the amount they're spending on the acquisition in the first place, because actually more subscribers are staying with you for longer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It comes back to, it sounds like anyway, because it comes back to what you mentioned earlier about generally integrating your teams, but also things like, customer service and your account managers and whomever else with the top of the funnel teams as well, right? And then using that, because this is now, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But I've sort of inferred from what you were saying that because your costs will probably come from, or rather, your investments, as we've said, will probably come from your,
Much better.
yeah,
Yep.
excuse me, your paid ads, right? And that's starting to become more of a, and your paid acquisition, right? That's becoming more and more of a thing for publishers. But then it sounds like if you've integrated well, your internal teams, you actually get a bit of a boost, or maybe a strong boost, from your organic content, because that will also bring in customers, which is totally free, but mitigates your total cost of acquisition, because they're still new members, they're still new customers, but you've acquired them for free. So you're sort of winning on both ends there. You're reducing costs, but still growing at the top end.
So I am sadly old enough to remember the probably slightly pre-internet days when you could push out some inserts, some direct mail, some page ads. People would phone up, they would give a code, and you would be able to attribute every order to the source in which it came. Those days are far gone. But we all still try, and there are still, some brilliant ways of tracking these things. But unfortunately, unless you're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds with on digital marketing, it is really difficult to do a full and accurate piece of attribution. But first of all, understanding your customer and getting the messaging right all the way through the funnel means you are more likely to put the right message to the right person at the right time in their journey of kind of getting to know you. So you've got that chance. And then you've got all these wonderful touch points across digital, whether that is social, whether that's your emails, whether that's ads or whatever that you're running, to then gently nudge them closer and closer to that point of conversion and consideration. And I think it's about that quality, and you can help that quality along by making sure you're approaching customers in the right way. Because actually, converting someone too early will probably mean they might churn more. Converting them later might mean actually they're going to stay with you longer. They are more having a relationship with your brand in a way that you want them to. And I think it's a real challenge, because justifying upper funnel spend is nigh on impossible. But I've seen, COVID was one of those exceptional moments where suddenly there was demand in the market, driven by all of us in this horrible situation, all stuck at home. And what do we want? We want our passion contents. So we're like, okay, I want to know more about cars. So you've got all these different situations where demand is growing. Now that's gone. Brands now have to get back and make their own weather. They've got to drive that demand, which means going further and further up the funnel, because actually brand visibility is something. Now the news trade is not as extensive as it was. How do what magazines get out there and get known? Now that's, the internet does facilitate that a lot more, but it's not quite the same. And actually, I've seen some wonderful sides. I remember with the Week Junior, we used to give out free copies of the magazine to children queuing to get into museums. And you could see correlation a few days later with people going to the website because they were looking at the ads on the cover art that was with that magazine. And you have to find those little moments of magic that go, actually, look, this is making a difference. Going up the funnel, doing audio, doing that kind of thing is actually making a difference to my organic orders as much as the directly attributed ones. And there's lots more publishers who are having really great success on social now. But it's not that it's directly trackable generally. It's that it's a brand thing, and you see orders increasing across the board. And probably they'd be attributed organically. But if you have to draw all of these graphs and go, well, this is when this happened, and look, there's an impact in orders as a result. It's a really, really tricky thing to do. But, we've tried this in lots of kind of different places, and, podcasts are fascinating because you're right in someone's ear. And that is a really nice way of starting to kind of get that relationship. And then you can see, oh, this was when we were featured on that podcast. Oh, look what's happened to our orders.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like modern day version of the corkboard and red string, right? All these, and you're
Oh,
like,
I
oh,
did that once.
that
I
doesn't
did that.
surprise
So
me. I love it.
anyone who, gosh, this was back when Dennis was in Cleveland Street. We found a big board. And we tried to map every touch point that someone could possibly have with the brand. And
Amazing.
to be honest, it looked a little bit like one of those kind of murder boards where you had all these kind of different things and all this string. And it was,
And
I
then
think
just the brand at the
just
middle. Yeah.
shocked us. It shocked us how many touch points they could be having.
Yeah, but you're dead right. Like, I mean, first of all, just to touch back on something you said at the very beginning of that, there was like you mentioned the word relationship, and I think that's it. Because because the way I look at it is, first of all, relationship, like any relationship, is built on trust, right? And any transaction, the trust, or rather, let's look at it from a different, the risk that the buyer feels. They think, oh, am I going to get value, like we said, for the price that I pay, right? And
Yeah.
every buyer is looking to maximize that. They don't want to get stiffed. In fact, they want to like everybody wants a deal, right? So it doesn't matter what price
Yeah.
point or what product or service, you want to get more bang for your buck, regardless. And I think this is what maybe, because a lot of companies struggle with this. Forget about publishers, right? But just broadly, businesses struggle with this, I think, a little bit. Is like, how do we, from a very abstract way of looking at it, how do we de-risk the transaction such that the customer feels like there is zero risk to me whatsoever? If I give you my money, I am getting something great that I think you're getting stiffed, right, by me because I'm
Yeah.
paying less than I would probably pay for that. I'd pay 3 times that. You're an idiot. And that's so. But this is what's lost on people. So, and the same thing is because this debate, right? You mentioned the word brand and branding and stuff, and I've controversial opinions on this because I don't come from like the marketing world or the PR world, and there's this a lot of let's just say it's a debate about advertising now. For me, branding is what you do, right? And marketing is what you say. But ultimately, like people only like because the branding is like basically the positioning, right? It's what people think of you when you're not in the room, when you're not there, and the only thing that they have to go on is what you've done for them. So, for example, Apple is a brand that people throw around all the time. Why are they so good? It's because of the quality of their products and their messaging, right? So they
Yeah.
don't have like one or the other, right? Because there's been loads of great products at terrible messaging, flopped, loads of like really expensive, amazing, well, I wouldn't say amazing, but like high production marketing campaigns for terrible or at least mediocre products. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so and then that discrepancy is really what causes problems, I think, for people. So this is why Apple nail it. Not to say that they're necessarily the best. I'm sure if you ask any tech geek, they'll say, well, they suck at all these things or whatever. But it's the reason it's a successful brand, in my opinion, is because of what they do, right? The product and the quality of the hardware and all that stuff matches the way they talk about it. And I think for me, that's what businesses get wrong. Do you think there's something in that for publishers then as well, in terms of being able to like to make it all succinct, to basically provide value up front such that the reader thinks, oh, like I'm not only happy to pay this membership fee or subscription fee, but also I'd pay more. They just don't realize. And so, I'm in.
Well, that's the point at which you have to work that out and increase their price further down the line. But I jest. I think so. Two things. First of all, I'm going to defer in this point to Robbie Kelman-Baxter. I think she's amazing. I think if anyone wants the subscription book, the Forever transaction is absolutely fantastic. And Robbie has really pinned that down because it is about a transaction which is, I promise that you're going to get this. And if I continue to deliver it, you'll continue to pay me for it. And it is it's a lifetime potentially transaction if you get it right. You think about the kind of, you generally go for a newspaper and that is your newspaper worldview often for your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And Robbie always talks about one particular newspaper she's been subscribing to for 30, 40 years. But it is that piece, and it is about being honest and open and clear at that transaction, making, money back guarantees are really important to people. Knowing you're not stuck and you can cancel and you can, there's lots of conversation at the moment, and they've just implemented it in the States. It's coming over to the UK. The whole kind of, it needs to be as easy to cancel as it was to subscribe in the first place. And I was on a panel with someone from Beatport who said they'd actually kind of gone out to almost saying, well, we tested with a really strong subscribe and you can cancel whenever, had actually had a higher conversion rate than their normal campaigns. So I think it is about being really, really open and transparent and realistic with customers, not promising something you can't deliver, because ultimately that's no ground for an ongoing relationship, but also having that kind of opportunity for people to say, look, this isn't what I wanted. Well, if you cancel with the FT, they're starting to work on, well, actually, if you're cancelling and you're getting the paper every day, and we think actually you'd be better on this offer. If you look like you're going to cancel, actually, should we be just taking you down a tier? And being open and willing to that is I think really important. We have to be honest with our consumers. We can't just keep selling them stuff because we need to charge a higher price because someone in finance needs to make more profit this year, because ultimately what that will end up with is more people cancelling in the long run.
Yeah, it sounds that if you provide the value first, then people will stick around, right? And the FT example is really nice there. You've laid out, because you mentioned a word there a minute ago, delivery, right? So it sounds like you don't necessarily have to have one way of delivering the same thing necessarily. You can think about delivering. Super easy example is you could have, let's say, for any article, you can have an audio version of the article for people to listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an almost zero cost option to give people a completely, because then they don't have to either sit there or whatever. And there's countless of ways to look at that then. It's like, oh, well, okay, that's just one thing. But, how do maybe the different customer segments we have, not necessarily what do they value in terms of things like the content, or why do they even arrive at the destination we've created, but how do they expect it to be delivered, right? I mean, I live in the middle of the city here, so if you order Deliveroo, right, just to really be literal about this, you can pick up yourself if you want to. You can have it delivered, and there'll be a guy on a bike, or if you're close enough to somebody who will walk. There's multiple options. I think that's maybe also lost on people, particularly publishers, who think maybe, I don't know, they all group people into the same buckets. Maybe they just don't expand the horizons enough to start considering all these other options for delivery that maybe previously weren't considered.
But I'd also say I think we've done a terrible job of talking down how much people love magazines. And I think that's the thing, is actually, there is something about the quality of a magazine, and that, especially now, off screen, reading on paper, offline, it is something that people really, really value. And I think thinking about it almost as towards luxury, as opposed to kind of, oh, we just need to deliver this the cheapest way possible. The experience is core to this. Is this something I want to, if this is news and I want to read it quickly on the go, maybe you do need to send me an email at 8:00 every morning. But if this is a long article, maybe actually having a lovely piece of paper printed beautifully inside, delivered to my door, is actually what I want. So I think it's having the choice and the opportunity, but it's also then building out what else is there. And sometimes that's all people need. And recognizing that for some people, that relationship is already perfect. You just need to keep doing it as well as you're already doing. You need to make sure that magazines are arriving in the post. But it's then that next level, what's the digital version of this? Is this, oh, I want puzzles? Is this, oh, I'm now part of membership and I can comment below the line on articles, so I'm going to go and have an argument about whatever's just happened today with somebody at the bottom of an article, and I value that, and that makes me part of a community.
Mm-hmm.
The Esther from Women's Running has talked brilliantly in a podcast and at the PPA about all these different ways that this community has built, whether it's on Discord or via podcasts or whatever. It's reacting to how people are talking to you and pushing out your content in the way that works best, and trial and error. I mean, you got to give it a go if it's not too expensive.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that is absolutely. Try things and try them at low cost, and then if they work, great. Expand. If not, well, then scrap it. That's great. And it's as well. What I love is like the medium is the message, right? A little bit. Rory Sutherland goes into this a lot. If somebody is inviting you to their wedding, for example, you get this lovely embossed envelope and card, and it's thick, and it's ribbon and maybe glitter and perfume and whatever. God, how people go to the ends of the earth for that.
Yeah.
If somebody sent you an email saying, "How are you? We're getting married," you'd be like, it's kind of strange. So the same thing, it applies to sort of publishers as well, especially for like if you're delivering a physical magazine. And again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that maybe that should be different to what you're actually providing for the same magazine, but on the digital sphere. Like you say, if people want, you might want to read the 3-page, 4-page interview over your coffee, right? Or maybe when you're relaxing at the weekend or something like that in your downtime, rather than maybe playing a quick game or just having your catch up on the commute to work or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And having not just different, I guess, well, there are obviously touch points and delivery mechanisms, but just formats really. Not for the sake of being different, but also then the content of what's in there is different itself because it's more suited to that specific medium rather than just trying to.
But this is flipping round to what we were talking about right at the start of this conversation, which is ultimately, if you don't know who your customer is, how your customer wants to engage with you, and what that customer needs, you're just throwing stuff out there, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't, but go talk to your customers and find out. The COO of Bento, who is the tech platform behind Gusto, was talking about how they have aligned they send out loads of NPS questionnaires. So where would you recommend this
to a friend.
Service to a friend? They have got that absolutely now aligned to retention rates.
Wow.
So they were talking at Subscriptions X conference about how, they can go, based on this feedback this month, do we need to improve something technological in the back end, change our marketing, or spend more money on spring onions? It's understanding what your customer needs are and responding to it. Because ultimately, your customers and your data has the answer.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. It would be remiss of me not to mention copyright and authors' rights and ownership now, especially there's been a number of lawsuits, both sides of the pond. From your own expertise or your own just advice or just how you see things, what are the options available for either independent journalists or publishers to protect their work? And then is there anything that you think is important that, should be discussed in that particular space? Because, again, you'll know better than I, but traffic is super important, especially in the digital realm, right? So traffic is super important. Yep. You can't convert anybody. You can't deliver any value if you can't get the customers to your destination in the first place. How do you think about that generally?
So I'll pick up on the traffic thing first. There's always that conversation about back to quality. If you get loads of traffic, classically, there was always, if you get loads of traffic, you'll get loads of conversion. That's not necessarily always going to be true. Your traffic, there might be something that's happened. There's a big spike. It's low quality traffic. Something's got posted somewhere and everyone's loaded in, but they're not your audience or your brand. I think what all of this comes down to is you've got to maintain that trust and having direct relationships with your customers, whether that is as simple as subscribing to an email newsletter or more complex, subscribing to a bundled product, trying to build up those relationships that when people have got questions, it's not just going to whatever AI they're seeing and going, oh, I don't know. Oh, I'll go in here. They trust you.
Mhm.
And by trust you, that means not just about the content that you're delivering, but how you're dealing with them. So can you cancel easily? Is it really clear what you're paying? You know, all of those things. Do I feel like this brand has the best expectations in mind for me? So I think there is that piece. There is some really beautiful work going on. People like Nursing Times using the AI engines to be able to do questions and answers. That's powerful use of this technology and actually kind of going that direction rather than kind of just like being a little bit Chicken Little running away the sides. But you've got to engage with it in some way. You can't use that Nursing Times engine anywhere else. You can ask a couple of questions. Once you start asking it something more complex, you have to subscribe. That is a super clever way of using this kind of system. I'm really fascinated by what's happening with Substack at the moment, because certainly for freelance journalists, it's a really interesting question, because I can now put out my content and it is a simple solution to be paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite looking forward to some of those people coming to me in a couple of years' time going, oh, my revenues are going down. What do I do about it? Because that's going to be as much, people who are creating these effective, like little publishing empires of their own. So I think it is quite scary where, I worry about the quality of where a lot of this has come from. I worry particularly that a lot of content these engines are trained on it's been male written, because most of our historical literature was written by men. So how do we make sure that all of these voices are of equal value, that we are understanding things in a global level, and what the engines are coming up with is both true and trustworthy and that's where at the moment I don't think anyone has an answer. But being practical and trying to use these things to their best ability. For example, some of the AI work that's able to deliver the right message to the right subscriber at the right time. Brilliant.
Mm.
Identifying people who have propensity to churn and doing something about it. Setting up automations. It's going to make marketers more efficient. There are some huge opportunities out there and some brilliant people doing very, very clever and useful things that will make it easier for marketers to reach customers better. But as for the bigger, I'm going to plead silence on that one, because that's a big, scary question that I don't think anyone knows the answer to yet, do they?
Maybe not, but Writers Bloc is certainly trying to answer that question with what we're doing.
Good.
But that's my shameless
Very pleased
plug.
to hear it.
I won't.
There you go. Set you up beautifully.
Tech has certainly been a taboo in publishing in terms of like adoption of, or like embracing, or sort of moving towards. To be honest, I actually don't know why. This is something that baffles me. I don't really come from the publishing or journalism world. So for me, it's kind of eye-opening every day just to see more people kind of still rejecting it to some degree, but that's changing. Like, people are becoming more and more embracing of it, slowly, albeit.
Yeah.
And dragging the heels a little bit, but they are embracing it. So yeah, I just find it fascinating that there is a big push against it. Let's say if somebody was to find their work on ChatGPT and they think, hey, I didn't get any attribution for this, I'm not being remunerated for this or paid for this, you know, what can somebody do? It just based on your own sort of experience.
I don't know. And I think it is, some of these things when you hear people who've written books and suddenly they've asked ChatGPT and it's there.
Mm-hmm. I know, yeah, exactly. I know a few people who've mentioned exactly those cases, yeah, where they, and then it's, not a line or two, it's pages, and you can
The
query
whole thing.
the exact page and the exact paragraph, and then you get the whole, and you're like, wow. So, last question, and we'll wrap up here. Really appreciate your time. What is it in just, let's say, publishing or journalism or media in general, or maybe even more niche, like in subscriptions specifically, because that's actually, I suppose, it's wider than publishing, but it's its own niche.
Hmm.
What are people not talking about that they should be talking about, that you think maybe needs more attention
Oh,
or
what
spotlight?
do I think that needs more attention? Um, Lifetime value, but you knew I was going to say that.
A little bit.
I yeah, a little bit. I think it's that combination of understanding that you're not that holistic view, understanding that it is not the subs team who are doing this thing over here. It is the editorial team who are generating it. It's the publishing strategy. And ultimately, I mean, it comes down to one of my favorite things, which phrases is subscriptions as a team sport. It's not something that the subs team are doing over there. It needs to be absolutely central to your business, and being customer centric is a challenge. Lots and lots of companies think they are, but they're not. And actually thinking about how to be customer centric and how everyone in your organization needs to understand that they are contributing, whether that is stopping people from churning, which could be a content or a product or a tech role, or encouraging people to subscribe, which might be writing articles or doing marketing or whoever is answering your telephones. But ultimately, if you can bring your whole organization together and be really focused on it, that is when you really, really will win.
Amazing. Quick side question. Do you think publishers are doing enough cold calling to their customers or to their members in general?
First of all, I would always say any marketing team should be listening to customer calls, even if it's just listening to customer services, at least a few customers every single month. Absolutely no question. Everyone should be doing regular readership surveys. And if you get the opportunity, you should be doing kind of qualitative reader panels and that kind of thing. I don't think we're doing it enough. I think just getting out there and meeting your customers can make a huge difference. Whether that is just go to an event. If your brand is doing an event, just go and talk to the people who are actually buying it, and get to know what they are really like.
I love it. Get out of the building. What we started with. Look at that story circle. Perfect. Right.
Very good.
Um,
Like it's almost you planned it.
Almost. Yeah. Who would have thunk it? Okay. Where can the people find you, Abby? Because this has been great, super useful for me just to learn, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Where can people find you? Where can they find Atlas and learn more, and then hopefully, bring you on board to save the world and save all their problems.
Wow, that's quite the setup. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Abi Spooner. You can find me Abby at atlas.how. And that's also atlas.how is our website. So drop me a line and let's talk more.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll leave some links down below as well for the people to make it easy. But
Great.
really, really enjoyed this conversation, Abby. Thanks, Emil, and really, really appreciate it. So thanks very much.
No problem at all. Great to talk to you.